Hi, welcome to my video diary, my Mercedes Sprinter 311 CDI. I've been chucking out water, pressuring up in the radiator big time. Not the classic signs, no water in the oil, no oil in the water, but it's got to be cylinder head gasket, or failing that, it's got to be cylinder head. Either way, it's not such an expensive job, just a very time consuming job, so labour charges would be a lot. And I like to prep up on these things, but there isn't a lot out there on the net, which is why I thought I'd do this little video diary to see if anyone else out there can find this useful after I've done the job and hopefully fired up the engine to prove that it all works. Already done the basics, thermostat, check the radiator, it's got to be cylinder head gasket. So with the grills and the radiator off, you've got access to all the ancillaries on the front there. You can see you've got the diesel pump and the belts, and you've just got to plod on really, stripping it all down. And it just takes time, but the money you're saving on labour you can spend on proper Mercedes parts, genuine Mercedes parts. That's what I did anyway. And so you can see it's very easy with a set of star bolts, everything star bolts. You've got the diesel pump, and you just whip everything off in one go. You've got diesel filter, just make a note of where all the pipes and leads go. And the tensioner on the belt, on the Poly V belt there, you can just put a torque on there and loosen it. Everything goes inside the van. Job done. So basically, armed with your set of torque sockets and torque bits, you can plod on, taking all the bits and pieces off the front. It's fairly straightforward, just a test of patience. Fiddliest bit is reaching round to whip that manifold off on the right hand side there. You've got some fiddly little star bolts at the back there, but you can do it in situ. You can work around the insulation lining at the top. You don't need to take that away really, and it all just gradually unfolds before your very eyes. So the aluminium cam cover on the top there, you've got to be careful with that because you've got your injectors to come out next. You can see the 4 injectors in line in the middle. Pull off the sockets, being careful of the little clips, and you can lay everything to one side, and it might be stubborn. The injectors can be very stubborn, so if you need to soak them with something, you can then switch to the manifold and start undoing that. Guess what? Here's the number 1 injector here. It is seized. 3 slipped out beautifully, but this 1 injector is seized tight. It does happen. You hear all sorts. I've had friends who are telling me that they've had to take slide hammers and soak it with Coca-Cola and penetrating fluid. It's carbon deposits basically. It slips past the bottom of the injector and can jam it in. 3 have come. You can see 3 have nicely slipped out. And this top one here, I would recommend don't spend weeks soaking. Don't spend days hammering with a slide. Just whip this little bridge device out here. These long bolts here, they're throwaway bolts, but just keep the bridge there. You have to take those out before you can pull the injector, and if you're lucky the injectors will just slip away, but of course I wasn't lucky with this one. So what I would recommend is this little baby. This is a superb bit of kit. Beautiful little device, nicely machined and engineered just to fit over there. Take the top of your injector off, of course, unscrew everything from inside, being really careful. You'll need a magnet because there's a tiny moon washer in there that locks everything in. But once that's out, you can drop this tool in, and it's only a few quid. I think it was 20 quid this thing was on eBay, but it's just so nice. It's such a little nice device. Drop the inner pin down, thread it into the injector, and you can drop a nut down on the top. And you'll see one of the reasons why I like this little device is that you don't have to break into a sweat. It's actually got a lovely little bearing just there at the top. So the only friction you really feel when you're winding down on this nut is hopefully the friction on the injector departing from its socket inside the engine, whipping away from all the carbon deposits. So I think it's 10mm spanner possibly, something like that on the top. And so if you just anchor the top with a spanner and then get a wrench on the nut, you can just wind the nut down, and if you're lucky, the injector will just slide up into the little extractor. It's a nice little tool. Thoroughly recommend it. Et voila, here we are. Look at this. Hey presto. Does the job just like I've been raving on about. It's a nice little tool. And the ejector should slide out, and it should bring with it a little copper washer on the bottom. We can see here it's not on the bottom of this injector. It must still be in the little chamber, the injector chamber, so that'll have to be hooked out, and you have to clean the surfaces at the bottom of there. You need a good tight seal when it all goes back together again, with a bit of ceramic grease as well. Those injectors are pretty expensive, so look after them. Magnets are really good to make sure you don't lose the internal bits. There's a little tiny bearing in there which I nearly did lose, so be careful of that if you take the injector apart. You're saving money on the labour, so you don't want to do it again. This stretch bolt is a stretch bolt. Throw it away. It's quite finite. When you put it back in, you want to just put 7 Newton meters and then 2 90-degree turns on it, and if you don't, it's going to be trouble for you in the future, so don't skimp on those bolts. The aluminium cover, look, is intact. People do smash them if they use different techniques. Here we've got the cam comer off, and cams are revealed. 2 little dots you'll see. Keep them lined up with the shells. Those shells just come up undone. Start nice and methodically and gently releasing them. And check also. You can see in the middle of the picture here 2 little markers, 2 little holes. Look where the 2 teeth meet of those 2 cam cogs. Make sure they go back together. And you cannot take the chain out without removing, where I'm pointing to, this chain tensioner. That chain tensioner is a big bolt with a spring on the end. Get it out. I've taken everything off here, and I've suspended it with elastic. Not sure if I really have to, but I didn't want it dropping off the bottom cog, because I've got everything locked together, so it just makes the whole process easier going back, because I'm not replacing the chain. It's low mileage, even though I had a problem. You can see the new cylinder head gaskets on there. I spend hours polishing the old surfaces and getting them just right. It's like a hospital, clinically clean. Everything is spotless in there. Really important that you do that. And here's my cylinder head back from the reconditioners. I had a minimal skim, new valve seals, and just a good proper check. And it looks lovely. Work of art, that is. I should say at this point it would be false economy not to have it skimmed and checked and pressure tested by a specialist, because it's a big aluminium lump. You know, there's always warpage and variation, so get that done properly. And then it's just a matter of dropping the thing back on in clinically clean conditions. Assembling the cams together, just a reversal. You'll walk it once you've taken it apart, because it's a complete reversal. Just to tighten it down gradually in a sequence, starting from 2 and 4, and just gradually eke them down, because there's a lot of pressure on those springs. You don't want to bend or scrape or scratch or damage anything. I put some lubricant in on each shells before I drop them in, just when it for initial startup. I use the same chain, so actually I assembled everything and checked it's all lined up. Not turned the engine over yet, because at this point there's no tensioners on there, but I did mark the chain, and I marked the sprocket as well. You can see a little mark there, as I just pointed. And then you can start. You can see the main sort of cog down below there. That's a bit of a tensioner. There's no tension on that at the moment. That will move back into position and hook up to the diesel pump a bit later on. And the little tensioner there. The chain tensioner, the big nut, that needs to go back in there nice and carefully and be torqued up. Check all your torque settings. I had mine on a piece of paper. I've lost that now. I can't remember what that was, but it is quite crucial to get everything torqued up, especially those stretch bolts. I've not said that actually. When you put the head on this particular model, it's 60 Newton meters, and then you have to crank on 90-degree turn on each one, and another 90-degree turn on each one, and in a particular sequence. Again, I had all that on a piece of paper, just on one side, just to make sure I did get the right order of the big bolts. The big bolts on the head, they're stretch bolts as well. Chuck them and get some new ones. I know you can measure them for tolerances, but I just would rather spend a little tiny bit of money on something that's right at the heart of the job and not worry about it. Like I said, you can just see a little nick that I took in the chain there, just so that it helps me line it all back up. and as I've checked continually that they line up, you see the little holes on the cams there. Check they line up directly, both of them below the vertical line on the camshell. Whoa, we're on the home straight now. The cam cover's on, bolted down, and you can see a brand new copper washer on the bottom of that last injector with this white ceramic grease. Looks making it more slither in. And then you just have to put the locking bridge unit on there, and with our brand new stretch bolts, having thrown the old ones away, we torque them down with a little Diddy torque meter down to only 7 Newton meters, with a further 90-degree turn on each one, and then another 90-degree turn on each one, no more and arguably no less. And once you've done that, it's just a straightforward case of putting the manifolds back on and torquing them up and putting all the pipes and ancillaries on. Right, the big day. Well, this video is not worth much if it doesn't actually work after all the effort. So, here we go. Way. So here we go. Conclusion, you can do it yourself. You don't have to take the engine out. You can strip injectors and put them back together again. And you can save a shed load of money.